Chapter 41. The Female Knight Cassandra. Hershey was a good talker. She managed to keep the conversation going with no hint of awkwardness. She's still the same, Alaric thought as he looked at her flawless face. After another hour, they finally arrived at the main mansion of House Paxley. The lord of the house, Baron Nathan Paxley, a slightly chubby middle-aged man with balding gray hair, greeted him in front of the mansion. Beside the Baron was a middle-aged woman wearing thick makeup, Vivian Harrison. She was the lady of the house and also Hershey's stepmother. "Thank you for the warm welcome, Lord Nathan and Lady Vivian." Alaric slightly tilted his head to show his respect. Nathan Paxley laughed heartily at his words. "I'm glad that you accepted our request despite the harsh weather." Vivian also said something to him and Alaric replied appropriately. After a round of exchanging greetings, they brought Alaric inside the mansion. Warwick and Aelina followed half a step behind them. "I heard that you defeated the best Knight of Vale in an unofficial match. If only I wasn't busy with some matters, I would have joined the celebration and watched your performance." Nathan sighed to express his regret. Alaric shook his head and waved his hand as he responded. "I was just lucky. If it was a real battle, it would have been my defeat. I still have so much to learn from my senior knights." "Ha ha ha. You're too modest. How about you come with me to the training grounds before we begin our discussion?" Nathan suddenly suggested. His intentions were clear. His words ignited the interest of Hershey and Vivian. The former wanted to see Alaric's elegance in battle, while the latter was curious about the young knight's power. Alaric was surprised by his suggestion, but he also wanted to know the difference between the knights of the two households. "If that's what the host wants, then I will gladly comply." Hearing this, Nathan grinned. Great. He took Alaric to the training ground, which was located behind the main mansion. Before they even reached the training grounds, Alaric could already hear the sound of intense training. Upon their arrival, the warriors stopped what they were doing. "My lord, my lady." The knights and the rest of the warriors greeted them. Alaric observed them one by one, and a particular knight caught his attention. This was because she was the only woman in the crowd. However, her presence was not any weaker compared to the male knights. A female knight? That's rare. I didn't know that House Paxley had one. He thought to himself. For elite knights and 11 knights, there might be more who aren't here. He was impressed by their strong military force. If it was before, House Paxley was definitely stronger than them, but things were different now. With the help of the dragon-tail ferns they found in the Red Toad Gorge, House Silvasud managed to boost the strength of their people. Given some time, they would certainly surpass House Paxley's military power. "What do you think of them, Lord Alaric?" Nathan smiled when he saw the change in his expression. "They are powerful warriors. I can sense their strong presence from where I stand," Alaric remarked with a calm look. "Ha ha ha." Nathan looked pleased by his words. "Why don't you spar with them for a bit? Maybe they can learn something from you." Nathan squinted his eyes. When he heard the news about Alaric's amazing performance during the unofficial match held in House Silversword's estate, he had been eager to see his swordsmanship. Now that he had the opportunity to see his abilities, how could he possibly let go of this chance? Warwick, who was standing behind Alaric, frowned upon hearing this. He already had a bad feeling when Nathan mentioned visiting the training grounds. He approached Alaric and muttered, "My lord." Alaric turned his head and saw Warwick's stern gaze. "It's fine, Sir Warwick. It's only a friendly spar." "There's no need to be alarmed." Alaric tapped the man's arm. Warwick stared deeply at him and nodded after a moment of silence. He then looked at Nathan and cupped his fists. "I apologize for the delay, Lord Nathan." "Ha ha. It's all right." Nathan wasn't offended. He knew what the veteran warrior was worried about. "Now that it has been made clear, let's begin." After saying this, Nathan beckoned to his knights, indicating for them to come closer. Nathan selected 4 of the best knights and presented them before Alaric. "Who among them would you like to spar with?" Alaric glanced at the 4 he had chosen. their presence was the strongest among the 11 knights present. As expected, she is one of the best here, Alaric thought as he looked at the female knight. When the female knight sensed his gaze, she narrowed her eyes. She stepped forward and cupped her fists as she said, "Please allow me to spar with you, my lord." Her voice was filled with strong confidence. Nathan was a bit surprised that she had taken the initiative, but he didn't express any disapproval. Cassandra is our second best knight. It shouldn't be a problem to let her fight with Alaric. After thinking it through, he gave her a nod of approval. All right, Alaric replied without hesitation. The warriors of House Paxley smiled oddly when he accepted the challenge. Alaric also sensed the weird atmosphere, but he didn't care because his attention was currently glued to the cyan screen. Underscore. Mission. Might of House Silvasod 2. Difficulty. Easy. The might of House Silvasod is being doubted. Show them what would happen to those who doubt your power. Rewards. 150 battle points, 30 XP, random trait upgrade card by 1. Penalty for failure. 300 battle points. Underscore. Alaric was ecstatic, but he didn't show it to his face. Missions rarely come, but they give generous rewards. There's even a random trait upgrade card. He had gotten this card once and it had improved his horseback riding. Alaric closed the cyan screen and focused his attention on Cassandra. I'm sorry, but I have to end this quickly. Chapter 42. Overwhelming Victory. Nathan's gaze alternated between Alaric and Cassandra. Just by looking at their eyes, he could already feel the increasing tension. As the one who would officiate this spar, he felt excited. At this moment, Cassandra pulled out her weapon. It was a short sword, a weapon that was perfect for someone her size. Cassandra was quite tall for a woman at 1.75 meters, but against her opponents, who were mostly men with large frames, she was still at a disadvantage. To bridge the gap in physicality, she trained in using the short sword since it was the easiest to master. It was light and fast compared to other weapons. Take out your sword, she muttered as she stared at Alaric with a cold, piercing gaze. This is a good chance to use my upgraded sword against a real opponent. Alaric took out the uncommon steel sword and adjusted his stance. Seeing this, Cassandra frowned. I heard that you are a dual sword wielder. Why are you only using one sword? Are you mocking me? Anger was evident in her voice. She felt that Alaric was looking down on her. Alaric shook his head. You're thinking too much. Whether it was one sword or two swords, Alaric could use them perfectly because of his SSS-Rank swordsmanship trait. He didn't bother to explain himself. He wanted to show her that he was a versatile swordsman. Looking at his indifferent face, Cassandra was furious. She made the first move as she lunged at him with one leap. And then, in a fluid motion, she brandished her sword. Whoosh! Alaric's eyes were as calm as the surface of a lake. He remained unperturbed in the face of her quick movements. When her sword was about to land on him, Alaric brandished his sword. Clang! What? The moment their swords clashed, Cassandra felt like she was hitting an immovable wall. Alaric was firm and solid. Cassandra took a few steps backward before she stabilized her footing. She realized that he was far stronger than he looked. I have underestimated him to think that he is already this strong when he is only using one sword against me. What will happen if he uses two swords? Just the thought of it made her feel that she was still lacking compared to him. However, a glint of determination flashed in her eyes. I'm not done yet. Cassandra rushed at him in zigzagging movement. She planned to use her specialty against him, which was her speed. This move had never failed her once. Alaric raised his eyebrows in surprise. Not bad. She's even faster than Aldrin, but that won't be enough to defeat me. Alaric's eyes followed her every move. During his recent training, he finally discovered the purpose of his sixth sense trait. It was a unique trait that enhanced his senses, which served an important role that was crucial in battle. As soon as Cassandra brandished her sword, Alaric looked as if he had already calculated its trajectory. He made a quick step forward and slashed out. Whoosh! Clang! Their swords clashed and created sparks that flew in every direction. Crack! It was then that everyone heard a cracking sound as Cassandra's sword broke apart under the intense power behind Alaric's attack. The tip of Alaric's sword hovered in front of Cassandra's eyes, making the proud female knight smile bitterly. I lost. She glanced at her now broken sword with shock. He didn't even use mana, but he actually managed to break my sword. Unbelievable. Alaric sheathed his sword and cupped his fists at Cassandra. It was a good fight, he muttered. Everyone was stunned by how the fight had ended. They were aware of Cassandra's skill. As the second best knight of House Paxley, she had already established a strong image. No one would have thought that she would be defeated with such ease. Even a layman like Nathan could see the vast difference in their combat strength. Clap, clap, clap. A series of clapping sounds broke the silence. It was a good fight, Lord Alaric. Hershey smiled as she approached him. She didn't even bother to conceal her admiration for him. Alaric lowered his gaze when he saw her unmasked admiration. Thank you for your praise, my lady. Splendid. As expected of you, Lord Alaric. You even bested our second strongest knight. Ha ha ha, Nathan's boisterous laughter echoed within the training ground. Alaric didn't know how to respond to his straightforward words, so he only chuckled lightly. Meanwhile, Elena almost jumped in excitement when she saw Alaric's performance. Her eyes twinkled. She then sent Alaric a sneaky thumbs up when she saw him glance her way. On the other hand, the stern-faced Warwick smiled. He felt proud to see the young lord showing off his power. At this moment, all the warriors of House Paxley no longer doubted Alaric. They thought that the rumors they heard about him were exaggerated. Now they realized that those weren't just baseless rumors. Amazing! How did he reach that level of swordsmanship at his age? If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed it to be true. It seems like we are witnessing the birth of a prodigy who will one day engrave his name in the Estanian Dragon leaderboard. Alaric awkwardly chuckled when he heard their words. He then turned his gaze to Nathan and said, My lord, I would like to take a moment of rest before we begin with the meeting. It was only an excuse. The truth was that he wanted to spend more time with Hershey. She was one of his greatest regrets in his past life. Just recalling how he had treated her made him feel guilty. I will face your feelings this time, Hershey. Oh my! How thoughtless of me. Nathan facepalmed himself. Hershey, quickly bring Lord Alaric and his companions to the accommodation that we had prepared for them. He instructed his daughter. Yes, my lord. Hershey acknowledged his instructions with a nod of her head. I'm really sorry, Lord Alaric. I promise that I will prepare a feast for you tonight to make up for this mistake, Nathan apologetically said. You don't need to apologize, my lord. It's just a minor matter. Thank you for your understanding. A moment later, Hershey brought them to the guest mansion, which was just 50 meters away from the main mansion. Chapter 43. Hershey's Elegance in Tea Making. So this is the man that my lady is crazy about. He is indeed handsome, and he is also skilled with the sword. Hershey's personal maidservant, Maurice, thought as she looked at Alaric's face. She almost fell for Alaric when she saw him fight against Cassandra. We're here, my lord. Do you want me to give you a tour of the mansion? Hershey asked as she stared expectantly at Alaric. She was also like this in my past life. Even when I ignored her for a long time, she would always look at me with that face. Alaric nodded his head absent-mindedly. And so they spent almost an hour touring around the guest mansion. Hershey introduced everything to him in detail, from the paintings on the walls to the furniture, and she even told him how the mansion was built. She talked nonstop for that entire tour, but Alaric never got tired of her voice. He attentively listened to her and even occasionally made comments. As they interacted, they gradually became more comfortable with each other. Alaric could now look straight in her eyes, and Hershey could already make jokes with him. Elena saw everything happen, and she had mixed feelings about it. She was happy that her lord met an elegant and kind young lady, but she was also jealous of their growing familiarity with each other. She firmed her heart and repeatedly told herself that everything would be fine. After the tour, Hershey offered to make tea for him, to which Alaric agreed without hesitation. "I will be back in a minute, my lord." Hershey excused herself before she turned around and left to get the things she needed to make tea. As soon as she left, Alaric took his seat and opened the science screen. Underscore, mission complete. You received 150 battle points, 30 XP, random trait upgrade card by 1. Underscore, do you want to use the random trait upgrade card? Yes, no. Alaric clicked yes. Congratulations! Your trait Close Combat D has been upgraded to Close Combat C. A new set of memories appeared in his mind. He wasn't flustered by the sudden influx of foreign memories because he had already experienced this before. New hand-to-hand combat methods were introduced into his mind. It was a unique feeling, as if something was incorporated in his body. It's close combat this time, not bad. This will improve my combat ability. Alaric Silvasud 90 XP, 325 500ths. Potential B. Traits: Horseback Riding C, Swordsmanship SSS, Close Combat C, Archery F, Hunting E, Tracking F, Sixth Sense F. Strength 100, Stamina 34+, Agility 43+, Vitality 27+, Endurance 42+, Mana 13+, Battle Points 230, Stat Points 23. Requirements for next advancement: 500 EXP, 100 in all attributes, and 5,000 battle points. He already accumulated 22 stat points, but he decided to keep them for the time being. There might come a time when he would need to increase a specific stat, just like what happened during their encounter with the Goblin Chieftain. Without those extra points in agility back then, he wouldn't have lasted long against that monster. After checking his progress, Alaric closed the science screen. A few minutes later, Hershey and her maidservant arrived. The latter was pushing a tray cart with a tea set on top of it. "Thank you for waiting, my lord." Hershey smiled at him. She then sent her maidservant a look that said, "I'll take care of this." Maurice understood her intentions and took a step back with her head lowered. Her lady was proficient in tea ceremony, so she wasn't worried that she would make a mistake. "I will now prepare your tea, my lord," Hershey informed Alaric before she started preparing his tea. Alaric had already witnessed her expertise in tea making in his past life. It was refreshing to see it once more, and it was performed by a younger Hershey. The young lady's hands moved elegantly, and it looked as if she was doing a performance. Her movements were well practiced, as if it was deeply engraved in her bones. Elena, who was watching this, was awed by her impeccable performance. "I want to learn it." That was her thought as she watched Hershey's unmatched grace in making tea. A moment later, a freshly made tea was presented to Alaric. "Here's your tea, my lord. I hope you enjoy it." Alaric nodded with a smile. "Thank you." He lifted the teacup and inhaled the unique aroma of the tea. Hershey felt a bit nervous as she watched him. Will he like it? While she was nervously watching him, Alaric brought the teacup to his mouth and took a light sip. This familiar taste. His eyes glazed over as the familiar taste filled his mouth. "It's delicious," Alaric remarked as he tried to smooth down his emotions. Hershey's eyes brightened upon hearing his words. "I'm glad that you like it, my lord." She couldn't stop herself from beaming. Meanwhile, images of Hershey making tea for him in his past life flashed in Alaric's mind. Her gentle smile, her tender gaze, and her unwavering love. "I'm sorry," he muttered as he lowered his head. "HM, did you say something, my lord?" Hershey stared at him in surprise, wondering if she had heard him wrong. Did he just apologize to me? Maybe I heard it wrong. Alaric was silent for a moment as he looked at the tea inside the cup. "It's nothing." He shook his head. "The tea made me recall a distant memory," he added. "I see." Hershey was curious about this, but she felt that it was something that she shouldn't probe. "Why don't you join me, my lady?" let's talk about other matters while we drink tea. Alaric changed the topic. Hershey smiled and nodded at the suggestion. All right. What would you like to talk about, my lord? I heard that. The two engaged in a heartfelt conversation as they enjoyed their tea. Time passed by unknowingly. A servant came to inform them that it was almost time for dinner. I enjoyed our conversation, my lord. Let's talk again another time. We shouldn't let the others wait. Hershey reluctantly stood up. Alaric nodded in agreement. Chapter 44. Liam and Theo. At the dining hall, only Alaric was allowed entry, so he asked Warwick to protect Ilena. I'm sorry about your companions, my lord. Lady Vivian doesn't like it when servants dine with us. I hope you understand, Hershey muttered apologetically. Alaric wasn't annoyed since he already knew that some nobles could be very particular about status and customs. It's fine, he replied calmly. Hershey was relieved. She noticed that Alaric was very attentive to his servant girl. She could even feel that there was a vague connection between them. The dining hall is this way, my lord. Just one more turn and we will be there. In the next moment, they finally arrived at the dining hall. Nathan, Vivian, and two men in their 20s were already there seated in their respective seats. Lord Alaric, come here. We left this spot empty for you. Vivian beckoned to him as she pointed at the chair next to Baron Nathan. Alaric nodded at her. Thank you, my lady. Vivian's smile deepened. She then turned her gaze to Hershey and sent her a deep look. Hershey pretended like she didn't see this and sat to Alaric's right. After they had taken their seats, Nathan clapped his hands and gave a signal to the servants. Nathan looked at Alaric and said, I don't know what kind of food you like, so I instructed the servants to prepare all sorts of dishes for you. I hope that they will be to your liking. Anything is fine with me, my lord, Alaric replied with a light smile. That's good. By the way, I'd like to introduce you to my sons. This is my eldest son Theo and this is his younger brother Liam. Nathan introduced the two men sitting to his left. Alaric cupped his fists at them. My name is Alaric Silvasad. I'm pleased to make your acquaintance. The two men had different responses to his greeting. The older man, who looked to be in his late 20s, had short blonde hair and a lean physique. He didn't look quite pleased with Alaric's presence. The sidelong glance and his condescending gaze didn't escape Alaric's attention. The name's Theo. Meanwhile, the younger brother named Liam politely cupped his fists at Alaric. I'm pleased to meet you, Lord Alaric. My name is Liam. Unlike his older brother, who looked like a trained warrior, Liam was on the slender side. Alaric was already familiar with these two since he had met them in his past life. Theo might look arrogant on the surface, but he was very caring towards his siblings. On the other hand, his younger brother, Liam, is a gambling addict and also indulges in pleasure and alcohol. A few minutes later, the food was finally served. True to his promise, Nathan had indeed prepared a huge feast for him. All sorts of dishes, from seafood to monster meat, were presented on the table. Let's eat. The atmosphere in the dining hall was lukewarm. Only Nathan and Vivian spoke with Alaric. Surprisingly, Hershey didn't say anything, as if she was afraid of something. The strange atmosphere made Alaric realize that there was something he didn't know about this family. Suddenly, Vivian mentioned something that made everyone momentarily stop eating. Lord Alaric, what do you think of my daughter, Hershey? Vivian smiled with a probing look. Hershey's heart skipped a beat upon hearing this, and she couldn't help but sneak a glance at the young man sitting next to her. Alaric wiped his mouth with a napkin before he responded with a faint smile. Lady Hershey is a beautiful and elegant young woman. I'm very impressed by her skills in tea making. He paused as he turned his gaze to Hershey and continued. Before coming here, I heard that she is also a great painter. I haven't seen her paint, but I would like to have my portrait made by her. Hershey felt like her heart leaping in joy when she heard his words, and his gentle gaze was like a spell that enthralled her soul. When she realized that she had stared at him for too long, she was flustered. She quickly lowered her head to hide her reddening face. Oh, Vivian's eyes lit up. She didn't expect things to go this smoothly. She planned to betroth Hershey to another noble if Alaric showed no interest in her. But from the looks of it, there was no need for her to go through much trouble anymore. It's still too early to discuss marriage. I just hope that this little bitch won't do anything foolish to scare Alaric away. While she was immersed in her thoughts, one person was giving Alaric a sharp gaze. He tried to hide it, but Alaric immediately sensed his hostility because of his sixth sense trait. Liam, why did he suddenly become hostile? Alaric pretended like he wasn't aware of the other party's hostility. Liam lowered his head while clenching his fists. How dare that bastard flirt with my beloved sister? She's mine. No one can take her from me. A crazed look flashed in his eyes. His body trembled and he felt a sudden itch in his arms. Why does it have to be now? Liam's body trembled and sweat slowly trickled down his face. I need to get out of here quickly while I'm still sane. Thinking about this, he abruptly stood up and said, I'm full. I'll take my leave first. He then turned around and left in a hurry. Why is that kid in a hurry? Nathan muttered with a perplexed look. He then smiled apologetically to Alaric. Please forgive my son's insolence. It's fine. He probably has some important matters to take care of, Alaric nonchalantly replied. Theo raised an eyebrow as he looked at the empty seat next to him. Did that bastard, damn it! I already told him to stop taking that suspicious medicine. He was aware of his younger brother's addiction to illegal drugs. He had already warned Liam not to take those pills, but it seemed like the latter had ignored his warnings. Chapter 45. The Suspicious Behavior of Liam. After the dinner, Nathan told Alaric to follow him to his study room to discuss the future collaboration of House Silvesod and House Paxley. For this discussion, Alaric asked Nathan's permission to bring another person, to which the other party agreed after some thought. In the next moment, Alaric brought Harris with him to Nathan's study room. This guy was the best talent House Silvesod had in the field of business. Harris's presence made Alaric feel at ease. Nathan glanced briefly at Harris before he turned his gaze to Alaric. Then let's begin with the first agenda. The things they talked about were mostly related to the joint businesses owned by the two households, as well as the future collaborations that they would work on. Alaric was prepared for this moment, but there were still some key points that he had forgotten. Fortunately, Harris was there to save his ass, so the discussion proceeded smoothly. Almost 3 hours later, Nathan stood up and let out a satisfied laugh as he extended his hand to our future collaborations. Alaric took his hand and shook it. To our future collaborations. By the way, you should stay here in Ravad for a while. I've already asked Hershey to accompany you in the next few days to give you a tour of the city. Hearing this, Alaric nodded his head. That would be great. I've been planning to have a look at the beautiful landscapes of Ravad. Having Lady Hershey with me will save me some trouble of having to travel around aimlessly. He chuckled. Ha ha ha. Don't worry. Hershey knows this city like the back of her hand. Then I look forward to my stay here in the next few days. Nathan heartily laughed. After a few small talks, Alaric excused himself and left with Harris. That was exhausting. I tried my best, but I'm really not cut out for this. Alaric shook his head with a wry smile. You did a good job, my lord. You just need more experience. With a little more training, you will soon be fine on your own, Harris replied with a light chuckle. Alaric shook his head without saying anything. He knew his limits. They returned to the guest mansion and retired to their respective rooms. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. My lord, it's almost time for your tour with Lady Hershey. Alaric was awoken by a soft hug on his arm. He rubbed his eyes and looked at Elena, who was staring at him with an exasperated expression. What time is it? He asked as he slowly lifted his body off the bed. Elena pointed at the wall clock and responded. It's almost 7 in the morning, my lord. You only have 30 minutes before your appointed meeting with Lady Hershey. Geez, you need to get up now. Looking at her pouting lips and her annoyed little face, Alaric laughed in amusement. Yes, my Lady Nana. Hearing this, Elena blushed in embarrassment. She then grabbed a pillow and threw it at him, but he expertly dodged it and rushed out of his room. GRR, Elena glared at his fleeing figure. Outside his room, Warwick was surprised to see Alaric running away in a hurry. My lord! The veteran elite knight took a peek at his room and saw Elena standing next to the bed with an annoyed look. She's the only servant who would dare to do something like this to Lord Alaric. Warwick chuckled as he shook his head. After a quick bath, Alaric changed into his new custom-made clothes. He then stepped out of the guest mansion and found out that Hershey was already waiting for him outside. Good morning, my lord. How was your sleep? Hershey's smile made her look even more beautiful. Thanks to your hospitality, I had rested well. By the way, that dress looks good on you, my lady. Alaric was mesmerized by her beauty. Hershey was a bit embarrassed by his compliment. I don't deserve your praise, my lord. In the next moment, Hershey invited him to the carriage. Just as they were about to enter, a figure suddenly appeared behind them. Hold on! Alaric stopped in his tracks and raised his eyebrows as he looked at the person who had stopped them. It was the lanky Liam dressed in standard noble attire. Liam, why are you here? Hershey looked surprised to see her brother. Liam smiled and slowly approached them. I heard that you two are going to tour the entire city. Will it be all right if I come with you? Hershey hesitated. She wanted to spend some time with Alaric, so she didn't want her half-brother to come with them. She also felt that Liam had given her strange gazes in the past few days, which made her instinctively suspicious. What should I do? Before she could respond, Alaric's curt voice drifted into her ears. I'm sorry, Lord Liam, but I would like to be alone with Lady Hershey. There are some matters that I would like to speak with her privately. I hope that you understand. Liam's smiling face stiffened upon hearing his words. This bastard! What a pity! Since you have some important matters to discuss with my sister, then I won't bother you too. Excuse me, Liam turned around and left with heavy strides. How dare that bastard embarrass me in front of my beloved little sister? Just you wait, Alaric. Accidents do happen on the road. Be careful, or you might trip. A cold smile hung on Liam's face. Alaric's senses were telling him that something was off with that guy, so he rejected his suggestion without hesitation. I'm sorry for rejecting him without hearing your opinion, my lady. He smiled apologetically at Hershey. It's fine. Hershey smiled as she waved her hand. She then changed the topic as they walked inside the carriage. You told him that you want to speak with me privately. So what do you want to discuss with me? Alaric was caught off guard and he was momentarily stunned. About that. Chapter 46. The Bridge of Eternity and the Benevolent God Ru. Hershey stared at him with anticipation, wondering what he'd say. Looking at her face, Alaric suddenly thought about something and said, Like I said last night, I hope that you can paint a portrait of me. Oh, so it's about that? Hershey was inwardly disappointed, but she didn't show it to her face. It's fine if you don't want to. I know that you are a busy woman. Alaric didn't make things difficult for her. It won't be an issue at all, my lord. Hershey waved her hand as she shook her head. She looked at his handsome face and smiled softly. Besides, I have already started painting your portrait. When she met him at the entrance of Rivard, she already had this desire to make a portrait of him. She wanted to paint his image on a canvas and admire his looks forever. I'm glad to hear that. The two began their tour together. They visited the most famous places and landmarks in Rivard. It was something that they had never done in his past life. Hershey acted as the tour guide, telling him about the history of each place they visited. At this moment, they were heading towards a famous tourist spot for lovers, the Bridge of Eternity. My lord, that is the Bridge of Eternity. It connects the district of Yorvin and Maniva. Hershey pointed at the wooden bridge that connected to districts that were separated by a river. It is said that the bridge was built by a farmer who was searching for his wife. It became a symbol of his love and longing for his wife. Her voice carried a trace of sadness when she told him this story. Did he manage to find his wife? Alaric asked while looking at the sturdy bridge. Hershey sighed while shaking her head. He went to the other side, but he found no traces of his wife. He would always visit this bridge to wait for her return, but years had passed and she still hadn't returned. The man had become old, but he never gave up on searching for her. In the end, he died on this bridge while waiting for her. Alaric was moved by the man in the story. What was his name? Hershey shook her head. No one knows his name, but people call him Old Man Cross because he would always cross this bridge. I see. He was a great man, Alaric remarked. Hershey nodded in agreement. She then pointed at the people kneeling and praying at the bridge. Look over there. Do you see those people? Alaric followed her gaze. As he observed those people, her voice drifted to his ears. People say that if you throw a coin at the river while you're on the bridge and sincerely pray, your wish will be granted. Do you want to try it? She looked at him with a smile. There's such a thing? Alaric raised his eyebrows in surprise. MN. It is said that the benevolent god Ru was moved by Old Man Cross's longing for his wife, so he baptized the bridge he created, which turned it into a place of miracle. Hershey explained. The benevolent god, Ru. The people of Ostania were devout believers of Ru, who was known as the benevolent god. It was largely because of this sacred religion that the empire was able to conquer a big piece of land on this vast continent. The members of House Silvasud were also devout believers of Ru, including Alaric himself. As they walked towards the Bridge of Eternity, Alaric began to question himself. Did Ru send me back to the past to stop the destruction of his believers? My lord, are you all right? Hershey's voice broke him from his stupor. Alaric smiled lightly and nodded. I'm all right. What do I need to do again? Just throw a coin and pray sincerely, right? That's right. I'll show you. Hershey took out a coin from her leather purse and tossed it into the river. She then brought her palms together and closed her eyes with her head lowered. Seeing this, Alaric followed what she did. He took out a coin and tossed it into the river. He then closed his eyes as he sincerely prayed to Ru. Ru, I don't know if you were the one who sent me back to the past, but please help me change the cruel future that I've seen. I don't wish to see that hell again. While he was offering his prayers, Hershey opened her eyes and looked at him. She smiled and patiently waited for him to complete his prayers. Not far from them, Elena also decided to give it a try. She took out a coin from her little pouch and threw it into the river. Ru, please give my lord your protection. It was the sincere wish of a servant who had fallen for her lord. A few minutes later, Alaric opened his eyes. If you're done, we should go. There are still more places that you have to visit. Hearing this, Alaric calmly nodded his head. He took one last look at the Bridge of Eternity before he left with Hershey. Elena and the rest of their subordinates followed quietly behind them. Upon entering the carriage, Hershey noticed the change in Alaric's mood. My lord, are you still thinking about Old Man Cross's story? Hershey smiled. Alaric lifted his head to look at her. Are you by any chance worried about me? He asked with a teasing voice. Hershey was stunned by his words. What are you saying, my lord? She tried to cover up her embarrassment, but Alaric had already seen through her right from the start. He would be an idiot if he couldn't notice the special gaze she had when looking at him. So you have always liked me. Just when did it start, Hershey? The smile on his face deepened as he thought of this. Ha ha. I'm just joking, my lady. Alaric chuckled. Chapter 47, Alaric's Gift. 3 days later, the end of his trip to Raivad had finally come. In the past 3 days, he had traveled to the famous landmarks of the city together with Hershey. It was a rare experience for Alaric, and it made him temporarily forget the tragedy that happened in his past life. At this moment, Alaric was saying his goodbyes to Hershey and her family. Thank you for your hospitality. I enjoyed my stay here. Alaric shook hands with Baron Nathan, who was very enthusiastic throughout his whole stay. I'm glad to hear that. You can always come here whenever you want. Just give us a heads up so that we can make preparations before your arrival. Nathan beamed. I will definitely visit again. Alaric was quite fond of the place, and he was already looking forward to his next visit here. Ha ha ha. That's good. Vivian also spoke with him briefly, but he didn't have a good impression of this woman, so he only responded out of courtesy. Meanwhile, the two brothers, Theo and Liam, didn't say anything to him. The older one gave him a nod while cupping his fists, while Liam merely gave him a strange smile. Finally, he turned his gaze towards Hershey. She looked visibly down even though she tried so hard to hide it. She failed to conceal the glimmer of sadness in her eyes, which Alaric saw through at a glance. Thank you for the portrait you made for me, my lady. I will treasure it forever. Alaric stared intently at her soulful eyes. He wanted to embrace her and comfort her, but it would be inappropriate. I had a great time with you, my lord. Please visit again soon. Hershey forced out a smile. I will, he nodded. Before I go, I have something to give you. Alaric sent Elena a knowing look. The girl understood his gaze and took out a wooden box. She then walked towards Hershey and carefully handed it to her. Hershey was surprised by the unexpected gift. She didn't expect that Alaric had actually prepared something for her. You may open it. Alaric smiled at her while gesturing for her to open the box. Let me help you with that, my lady. Her maidservant, Maurice, took the initiative to open the box for her. The content of the box was revealed. It was a winter dress made from the fur of the spiked grizzly bear. We managed to hunt an adult spiked grizzly bear recently, and the dress was made from its fur, Alaric explained. Hershey's eyes were glued to the dress. She fell in love with it after one look. The craftsmanship was beautiful, and the dress was also perfect for winter. Even Vivian cast her an envious look. I love it. Thank you for the gift, my lord. Hershey hugged the dress while looking at Alaric's face. While the two were exchanging their goodbyes, one person was staring daggers at them. Damn it. Just go home already. Does he really need to flirt with Hershey in front of the whole family? Liam gritted his teeth as he watched the scene. He was jealous, and their growing relationship was gnawing at him. See you again soon, my lady. Alaric lowered his head. He then turned around and left while waving his hand. Hershey quietly watched him enter his carriage. Soon, Alaric's entourage left, their figures slowly disappearing from their view. Hershey stood there unmoving like a statue as she clutched the winter dress she received as a gift. I hope to see you again soon, Alaric. Liam stared at his sister's lonely figure with narrowed eyes. You will never see him again because I have prepared the most perfect gift for that bastard. As he thought of this, a cruel smile hung on his lips. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. My lord, someone is tailing us, Warwick reported with a stern voice. Hearing this, Alaric frowned. How many men do they have? He asked while guessing who had sent the pursuers. The veteran elite knight scrunched his eyebrows as he responded. They have hidden themselves well, but I can sense more than 20 men. 5 of them are the level of knights, while the rest are knight apprentices. Alaric's face darkened. The lineup was more powerful than he had anticipated. In a city like Raivad, this was already a sizable force. Tell the whole party to prepare for a possible attack once we leave the city, but make sure the enemies won't notice that we have already discovered them, Alaric instructed. He wasn't afraid of battle, but he was a bit worried about Elena's safety. Just which bastard is targeting me? For some reason, Liam's face flashed in his mind. Is it you, Liam? My lord, what did Sir Warwick say? Elena's voice resonated in his ears. Alaric's gaze softened as he turned his gaze to her. Elena, there are people following us. We still don't know their intentions, but we need to be careful. Elena's eyes shook with fear when she heard this. She clung to his arm and muttered with a quivering voice, I'm scared, my lord. Seeing her terrified face, Alaric embraced her and gently rubbed her shoulder. Don't worry, Elena. No matter what happens, I will keep you safe. I promise, he muttered solemnly. Elena timidly nodded. His words comforted her, but she couldn't stop her body from shaking. We will be safe while we are still inside Rivard. Those guys won't attack us in broad daylight since this place is the territory of House Paxley. But things will be different once we leave the city. Alaric's voice suddenly turned serious. The carriage walls are made of durable materials, so you just need to hide here when the fighting starts. Never open the door for anyone and wait for my return. Can you do that for me, Elena? Alaric reminded her with a grave look. Elena was afraid, but she knew that she must not make her lord worried about her in this situation. She exhaled a deep breath and nodded her head. Why, yes, my lord. Chapter 48, Pursuers. We have Warwick, 2 experienced knights, and 7 knight apprentices. The remaining 10 are ordinary soldiers. Alaric rubbed his chin as he entered into deep thought. I should have brought more warriors with me. He thought that the trip would be smooth since Rivard was the territory of their longtime ally. He was once again slapped by the harsh reality of the world. There was no such thing as a safe place on this continent. Even in North Pine Town, danger still lurked. As they neared the gates of Rivard, a tense atmosphere hung over the entourage. The warriors kept their dominant hand on their weapons, prepared to take action at a moment's notice. Just which idiots are targeting us? One of the 2 knights muttered, annoyance evident in his voice. He was a bald, middle-aged man with a short gray beard and a pair of blue eyes. The most striking feature about him was the sword scar that stretched from his left forehead down to the left side of his face. His name was Bernard, an experienced knight who had served House Silvisud for over 3 decades. Hey, lower your voice, reminded the knight who was riding a horse next to him. He looked a decade younger than Bernard with his thick eyebrows and wavy black hair. He also had a pair of monolith eyes which revealed the foreign blood that ran through his veins. This man's name was Chelmo. Warwick turned his head and glared at them, making the 2 knights flinch. We're about to step out of the city. Keep your eyes peeled. Warwick muttered in a voice that was just enough for them to hear. Renard and Chelmo nodded their heads in unison. A moment later, the group finally crossed the gates of the city. Everyone tightened their grip on their weapons while eyeing the surroundings with cautious eyes. Inside the carriage, Alaric's focus was broken by the sudden appearance of the cyan screen. Underscore, mission, kill the hired mercenaries. Difficulty, easy. A mercenary group was hired to kill you. Defeat them without losing a single soldier on your side. Rewards 200 battle points, 40 XP, 5 stat points. Penalty for failure, minus 350 battle points. Underscore, a mission. Alaric frowned when he saw the mission description. It wants us to win without someone dying on our side. Considering the difference in combat strength between both sides, this was a bit difficult. After all, they still need to protect the carriage where Elena would hide. Although they had Warwick, who was an elite knight, the other side had 5 knights and 15 knight apprentices. On the other hand, they only had 3 knights including Alaric, and 7 knight apprentices. The rest were just normal soldiers. If both sides clashed, it was inevitable for them to have some casualties. We need a plan. Alaric narrowed his eyes as he stared at the situation outside through the window. Their target should be me, so the focus of their attacks will be on me. Now, how do I make use of this information to defeat them without losing anyone? Alaric pondered deeply. Suddenly, an idea came to his mind. An isolation tactic. Yeah, that might work. As soon as he thought of this, Alaric slowly made his preparations. He let Elena double-check the straps on the leather armor beneath his winter coat. After making sure that everything was in place, Alaric looked at the young girl and said, Elena, never open the door until the battle is over. I will be back. Elena stared at him with a worried face. Please be careful, my lord. I will pray to Rue and ask him to protect everyone, she muttered in a trembling voice. Alaric nodded and patted her head before he stepped out of the carriage. He hopped on the war horse prepared for him, his eyes sweeping over the surroundings. There were no signs of anomalies, but his senses were screaming danger, something that had never been wrong before. At this moment, They had already traveled a certain distance from Ravad and they were close to reaching a secluded forest. Fighting in the forest would be dangerous for the group. We don't know what kind of weapons the enemies have, so it would be better to fight them in an open area where we can see them clearly. Thinking about this, Alaric raised his hand and signaled for the group to take a different route. Hidden not far from them were a group of warriors dressed in different kinds of armor. Some wore leather armor, while others were in steel-plated armor. Boss, why did they take a detour? Do you think we have been discovered? A man holding a pair of machetes asked the middle-aged man wearing an eye patch. Everyone glanced at their boss. This was a job with generous pay, so they didn't want any accidents to happen. The man wearing an eye patch frowned. It doesn't seem to be the case. Maybe they are just being cautious, but we need to make a move soon. Just wait for my signal. The mercenaries nodded upon hearing his words. Suddenly, they saw a man stepping out of the carriage. Boss, isn't that guy our main target? The man wearing an eye patch nodded upon hearing this. That should be him. Our client described his physical features in detail and everything seems to fit with that guy. It looks like our prey has appeared. My brothers, get ready to take action. He muttered as he took out his weapon, a two-handed sword. The eyes of the mercenaries flashed with killing intent and anticipation. Once they completed this mission, they wouldn't need to take on a job for a while. The man wearing an eye patch stared deeply at their main target. For some reason, he felt a chill upon seeing him. Juva, had never failed a mission once, so why do I have a bad feeling about that guy? He felt an instinctive urge to abandon the mission, but the generous rewards crushed the thought immediately. No, this must be a trial set by Agnus. As his follower, how can I flee without even fighting my enemy? Chapter 49, False Information. My lord, they are preparing to attack, Warwick reported with a cold gaze. Hearing this, Alaric pulled his swords and shouted at his men, Bernard, Chelmo, protect the carriage together with our soldiers. Don't engage the enemies and prioritize everyone's safety at all costs. Yes, my lord. Bernard and Chelmo quickly gathered the troops upon hearing his commands. Under their leadership, a defensive formation was quickly formed around the carriage. As long as they were sticking close to each other, they would be able to properly utilize the defensive formation. These warriors had been trained to fight in any situation, and with the two experienced knights at the core, they formed a formidable team. Without looking at them, Alaric stared at Warwick and said, Sir Warwick, our task is to eliminate as many enemies as possible while the others are protecting the carriage. Although he was surprised by his plan, Warwick followed his command without hesitation. Yes, my lord. With a wave of his hand, the veteran elite knight grabbed his favorite weapon, a double-bladed spear. Both blades of his spear were curved like that of a scimitar, sharp and deadly. At this moment, multiple arrows were suddenly fired at them. Sue! 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 Don't worry about me, Sir Warwick. Destroy them, Alaric roared as he casually destroyed the arrows with a wave of his sword. Warwick wasted no time and squeezed his legs, urging his horse to rush at the enemy's location. Sue! 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 Another wave of arrows was fired at him, but an invisible energy prevented those arrows from touching him. He had activated his aura manifestation, but unlike the goblin chieftain who only did it out of instinct, Warwick was able to command it at will. After blocking the arrows, he then pulled the reins and commanded his horse to take a huge leap forward. The mercenaries were momentarily stunned by his horseback riding skills. His daunting aura made them feel a heavy pressure pressing down on them. An elite knight. The overwhelming pressure he exuded and his unstoppable momentum revealed his strength. The mercenaries' faces fell. It's just one person. I don't think he can block all of us. Kill him, Juva, the leader of the mercenary group, shouted to his men, his voice echoing in their ears. With the words from their captain, the mercenaries' fear dissipated. They moved simultaneously and attacked in different directions. Impertinent fools. Warwick's eyes flashed with a fierce glint. The double-bladed spear in his hands rotated like a sharp propeller, slicing everything in his path. Shush, shush. Ah, my arms. Ah, hell. He was like a cutting machine, effortlessly slashing the limbs and bodies of the mercenaries. Of the 5 people who attacked him, 4 were cut apart, while the remaining one was writhing on the ground, his armless shoulders bleeding profusely. The blood of the fallen mercenaries drenched the ground in red. Meanwhile, a few enemies also pounced at Alaric. They aren't weak, but they lack the fundamentals of military warfare. That was his first thought when he saw the enemies. They had no battle formation and their gears were all so crude. Only warriors untrained in military tactics would fight like this. Their individual strength was formidable, but they moved sloppily as a group which presented many openings. To Alaric, who was a master of swords, a small opening was more than enough. While keeping himself steady on his mount, he waved his swords and aimed for their throats. Whoosh! 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 No one was able to dodge his quick strikes. The mercenaries fell from their horses, clutching their throat while gasping for breath. Looking at, Alaric ignored the fallen mercenaries and kept his eyes on the remaining enemies, particularly on the man at the forefront who had an eye patch on his right eye. Meanwhile, Juva was staring blankly at the 2 warriors who had decimated almost half of his entire group in just a few seconds. It looks like the information we had about them was not accurate. Juva muttered in a grim voice. Agnus, is it finally our time to meet you in the kingdom of Shifos? The thought of death didn't scare the mercenary leader. Only a glimmer of longing and desire could be seen in his eyes. With a fearless smile, Juva raised his sword and bellowed, My brothers, let's meet again in the Hall of Gods. For Agnus, charge! The eyes of the mercenaries burned with unwavering determination. Juva and his mercenary group were followers of Agnus, the god of war and chaos. They were fearless in the face of death because they believed that dying in battle would give them the chance to enter Shifos, which was known as the kingdom of swords where Agnus resided. So they are followers of Agnus. Damn these war-crazed idiots. Alaric cursed as he clashed with the other party. The mercenaries didn't care about getting injured. Pain only served to fuel their fighting spirit. They recklessly attacked Alaric's group. Alaric's mount cried out in pain and collapsed after being mercilessly stabbed by the crazy mercenaries. Alaric also received some cuts and stab wounds, but he managed to evade lethal damage. Damn bastards! He didn't like to fight against the believers of Agnus for this very reason. They were a bunch of crazy fanatics who didn't fear death. Clang, clang, clang. Alaric parried their weapons and evaded those he couldn't block. Agnus stared at his dying comrades. They were friends who had followed him for years, so he felt a sense of rage and frustration. He was furious at the enemies who had killed them, but he was more furious at the client who had provided them with false information. That bastard! Suddenly, the sound of a galloping horse drifted into his ears. He narrowed his eyes and saw the elite knight wielding the double-bladed spear coming towards him. You have made the biggest mistake of attacking us, follower of the violent god. Warwick muttered as his spear swished down like a mirage. But just as he was about to cut the mercenary leader into 2, Alaric's voice echoed, Wait! Chapter 50. Juva could feel the tip of the spear's blade piercing his skin. The elite knight pulled back his spear and lowered his head at the young man who had just spoken. Step, 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 step. Juva raised his head. He finally got a clearer look at the face of their main target. He was much younger than he had thought, but his dignity was overflowing. Answer my question and I will give you a swift death. Alaric stared deeply at him. Hearing this, Juva's lips curved upward to form a mocking grin. Piss off. You insolent fool. Warwick roared at the mercenary leader. Alaric raised his hand, stopping Warwick from saying anything. Alaric opened his mouth and muttered in a cold voice. I know that you are a follower of Agnus. Juva's smile stiffened. Alaric continued, according to his teachings, the souls of the warriors who die in battle will be welcomed in Shifos and live forever with him. If you answer my questions, I will gladly send you to Shifos. But if you don't cooperate with me, I will take you back with us and make sure that you don't die. No. Kill me. Kill me, Juva was agitated by his words. To the warriors who followed Agnes's teachings, there was nothing more humiliating than being granted mercy. They also believed that Agnes would only accept the souls of those who died in battle, while those who died of different causes would become an evil spirits with no hope of reincarnating again. I'll do it. I'll do anything you ask. I will answer your question. Juva was terrified of the thought of turning into an evil spirit. Very well, Alaric nodded, looking pleased by his response. Who hired your group? Alaric stared deeply at the mercenary who had lost his composure. Juva's face turned dark as he responded. It's Liam Paxley. It was him. His voice was filled with anger. So it's really him, Alaric muttered with narrowed eyes. He had already expected Liam's involvement to a certain extent, and the mercenary's words confirmed his suspicions. He sent Warwick a knowing look. Sensing his gaze, Warwick lifted his spear and slashed it down. Whoosh! Juva's decapitated head flew into the air, while the headless body collapsed to the ground in its own pool of blood. Alaric glanced at the carriage and saw a small number of corpses around it. He guessed that they were probably killed by Bernard's group during the battle. He then went inside the carriage to check Elena's situation. When he entered the carriage, he saw a terrified girl hugging her legs. Her hair was disheveled like an abandoned child. Elena, are you hurt? He hurried to her side and inspected her body carefully. The girl was shivering, but she didn't have any injuries. The arrows failed to penetrate the carriage's durable walls. I'm fine, my lord, Elena replied weakly. Her eyes scanned his body and she felt a pang of pain in her heart when she saw his wounds. My lord, you're hurt. Alaric gently smiled as he caressed her face. It's all right. They are just shallow wounds, he muttered reassuringly. Let me help you dress your wounds. They might fester if we leave them be. She rose to her feet and searched for the medicine box that she had brought with her, but she couldn't find it properly because of her trembling hands. Seeing this, Alaric felt guilty. I'm sorry, Elena. I shouldn't have brought you here. The little girl remained silent. After rummaging through the items, Elena finally found the medicine box. She turned around and carefully grabbed his injured hand. She then opened the medicine box and started cleaning his wounds. You don't need to apologize, my lord. It wasn't your fault. It was because of you and the warriors that I'm unharmed, so stop blaming yourself, okay? She glanced fiercely at him, which made him chuckle in amusement. While she was bandaging his wounds, Alaric opened the cyan screen. Underscore, mission complete. You received 200 battle points, 40 XP, 5 stat points. Underscore, Alaric Silvasud 90 XP, 369 500ths. Potential, B. Traits, horseback riding C, swordsmanship SSS, close combat C, archery F, hunting E, tracking F, sixth sense F. Strength, 100. Stamina, 34 plus. Agility, 43 plus. Vitality, 27 plus. Endurance, 42 plus. Mana, 13 plus. Battle points, 2540. Stat points, 32. Requirements for next advancement, 500 EXP, 100 in all attributes, and 5,000 battle points. He was already over half his EXP requirement, and he had even reached the halfway mark of his battle points requirement. My EXP and battle points are already at the halfway mark, but my stats are barely moving. At this rate, it would take me a year before I can advance to the next realm. I need to find a way to trigger more missions. That's the only way for me to speed up my progress. He noticed that missions would only appear when he was faced with unique circumstances. For instance, a mission appeared this time because they were attacked by a bandit group. If missions are only triggered during unique situations, why did I not trigger one when we last went to the Red Toad Gorge to find the dragon tail ferns? Alaric rubbed his chin thoughtfully. He was slowly learning how the cyan screen worked, but there were still some things that he couldn't understand. Maybe the situation at the Red Toad Gorge didn't fulfill a certain requirement to be classified as a mission. Alaric tried to come up with an answer, but he only ended up having more questions, which made his head hurt from all the thinking. Let's take it slow. The next major event is the orc invasion, which would happen within 2 years. I still have plenty of time to prepare for that day. I just hope that the orc invasion won't happen earlier than it did in my past life. This was what he was worried about. If the things he knew in his past life deviate too much, then his plans would be affected. Chapter 51. Liam's Machinations. After Aelin addressed his wounds, Alaric stepped out of the carriage to check his subordinates. "How is everyone?" he asked while looking at Bernard. "Everyone is fine, my lord. Some of our soldiers are injured, but their injuries aren't fatal. They only need a few days of rest to recover," Bernard replied while staring at him with unmasked admiration. Despite being the heir of a noble household, Alaric didn't hesitate to place himself in the most dangerous position. Other heirs would have chosen to prioritize their safety if they were in that situation, provide first aid to the injured, and monitor their condition from time to time. Also, build a wagon big enough to fit all of them. "You can use the spare tires of the carriage for the wagon," Alaric instructed. "Yes, my lord." Bernard acknowledged his command with a nod of his head. "You may go." After Bernard left to do his tasks, Warwick approached him with a solemn look. "My lord, how should we handle this matter?" This matter was big enough to destroy the alliance between House Paxley and House Silvasaud. If it wasn't handled well, it might even lead to a war. Alaric pondered deeply. "I can't let this matter slide. If I act like nothing happened, Liam would think that I'm a pushover. But how should I retaliate without ruining the friendship of the two noble households?" Warwick remained silent and calmly waited for his response. It was a difficult choice, so he wondered how Alaric would respond. After almost 5 minutes of silence, Alaric raised his head and muttered in a cold voice. "Once the wagon is built, we will head straight to North Pinetown and inform my father about the situation. House Paxley is definitely not involved with this. They will never do something that would damage the friendship of the two households. Which means that Liam is the sole culprit," he added. "I will never let that bastard get away with this." Alaric's eyes flashed with killing intent. Warwick felt a chill when he saw his gaze. "I will follow your words, my lord." He lowered his head. Not long later, Chelmo came running towards him with an urgent look on his face. "My lord, I discovered the contract between Liam and the mercenary group." "HM, where is it?" This was crucial evidence that would prove Liam's direct involvement. "It's here, my lord." Chelmo handed him the piece of parchment paper he was holding. Alaric unrolled the parchment paper and read the contents. The document noted down the mission that Liam tasked the mercenary group with. It was even stamped by both parties, which made it legitimate evidence that could prove Liam's crime. What an idiot! He actually left a trace that would lead back to him. "Just wait for me, Liam. I will let you live for a while, but mark my words, you won't have a good ending." Alaric rolled the parchment paper and kept it in his pocket. "Good job, Sir Chelmo." Alaric tapped the knight's shoulder. Without the document, it would have been difficult to seek justice. Chelmo grinned at him. "I'm glad that I found something useful. Continue searching their items. We might find something else." "Yes, my lord." Chelmo saluted and left to do what he had instructed. Under Chelmo's command, a few warriors rummaged through the mercenaries' items. Unfortunately, other than some money and their crude equipment, there was nothing of notable importance. A few hours later, the wagon was finally built. Alaric instructed the group to bring the injured to the wagon. Once everyone had settled down, the group marched towards the direction of Vale. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Meanwhile, inside a room in House Paxley's main mansion, Liam sat on a chair as he stared at the cloudy night sky with a faint smile. Those stupid followers of Ognus should be dead by now. He was already aware that an elite knight was leading Alaric's escort team. The reason he sent the mercenary group to attack them was because he wanted to make Alaric pay for coveting his sister. He also wanted to make use of Alaric's group to remove the potential threat that had grown significantly over the years. Whether Alaric died or not was not his concern. It seems like nothing happened to you, Alaric. What a pity. If something had happened to Alaric, his entourage would have returned to Ravad to investigate the incident, but since there were no signs of them, he was certain that Alaric was still alive. Thinking about this, he shook his head with a regretful look. Well, at least I managed to eliminate Juva's mercenary group. Now I have nothing to worry about once I inherit my father's property and position. Liam snickered at the success of his plan. I accomplished 2 things today. 1. I was able to punish Alaric for coveting what is mine. And secondly, I eliminated Juva's mercenary group, which would be a huge threat to my future rule. I'm really a genius. Hey ha ha ha. His evil laughter echoed within the confines of his room. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. On the 6th day of December, in the year 208 of the Estanian calendar, Alaric's group finally arrived at the entrance of North Pine Town. The mood was heavy and no one spoke throughout their return to the estate. At this moment, Lucas and Maria were happily waiting for them in front of the main mansion. Lucas was the first to notice them, and he immediately saw their haggard faces. Sensing the change in his expression, Maria raised her eyebrows. What happened? She asked with a hint of worrying. Lucas frowned as he muttered in response, They are injured. What? Maria covered her mouth in shock. What about our son? Is he all right? Lucas nodded with a grim look. He is fine, but he is also injured. Oh my God! Just what happened out there? Maria's eyelashes trembled. In the next moment, Alaric stepped out of the carriage with Elida closely following behind him. Seeing him covered in bandages, Maria immediately rushed to his side. My son? Are you all right? Meanwhile, Lucas stood there unmoving, his eyes filled with intense coldness. Chapter 52. The Brain of House Silvasod. Looking at Alaric's face, Lucas muttered, Let's discuss this in my study. Alaric nodded in understanding. He then looked at his mother, squeezed her hand, and gave her a reassuring smile. I'm all right, Mom. These are just minor cuts. Maria exhaled a long sigh. Let's go to your father's study. I'd like to hear the situation as well. All right. Alaric nodded, letting her know what had happened wouldn't be an issue. She was also smarter than both him and his father combined, so she might offer a better solution. Elena quietly followed them. She could sense that something big was about to happen, but she tactfully remained silent. A moment later, they arrived at the study room. Alaric and Maria entered, while Elena remained outside. Lucas saw his wife entering with Alaric, but he didn't say anything. He eyed his son and pointed at the chair in front of his desk. Sit down. Alaric obediently took his seat, while Maria sat next to him. With a deep look, Lucas muttered, What happened? Alaric furrowed his eyebrows as he recounted the whole situation. When we were about to leave Ravad, Sir Warwick sensed. We deliberately led them to an open area to force them to come out. I don't want to see anyone get killed, so I decided to use an isolation tactic by forming a defensive formation centered around Sir Chelma and Sir Bernard, while Sir Warwick and I would deal with the stronger mercenaries. In the end, we successfully eliminated the mercenaries, and we even managed to get evidence that helped us identify the person who hired the mercenary group. When he mentioned this, Lucas narrowed his eyes. Who is it? He asked in a flat tone. Alaric took out the parchment paper he had kept and handed it to his father. This is a document signed by the leader of the mercenary group and the person who hired them. You will see his name right there. Lucas grabbed the parchment and began reading the contents. When he saw the name of the client, his eyebrows shot upwards in surprise. Maria saw this and immediately asked, Who is it? I can't believe it, Lucas muttered as he handed the parchment to his wife. While Maria was reading the contents of the paper, Lucas stared at his son. Do you think it was really done by him? He asked in a low voice. Alaric nodded without hesitation. I'm 100% convinced that it was him. The guy seemed to be unusually attracted to his sister and he acted suspiciously every time I saw him. Annoyance was evident in his voice. Liam Paxley, Lucas had an impression of that guy. He was a lively kid who always wore a smile on his face. Lucas thought that he was a good kid, but from the looks of it, there was something dark about him. Maria put down the parchment. He probably likes his younger sister. He must have sent those mercenaries to come for you out of jealousy. What a sickening thing. She had a disgusted look on her face. Hearing this, Lucas nodded in agreement. That seems to be the case. I never thought that Nathan's second son is actually an abominable bastard. Lucas muttered as he leaned on his chair and rubbed his temples. The matter could lead to a serious conflict between both households. Father, I can't let this matter slide. How dare that bastard hurt me and our people? What Alaric hated the most were traitors. Not to mention that Liam had improper thoughts towards Hershey. Just thinking about it made him furious. Just how did that bastard die in my past life? In his past life, Liam died right after Hershey was engaged to Alaric. No one knows the true cause of his death, and House Paxley was strangely silent about the incident. It was as if they had intentionally concealed the truth. What do you want to do? Lucas didn't want to offend House Paxley, but this was a matter that concerned his son's life and the honor of House Silvasad. He couldn't just leave it be. I'll send someone to assassinate. Alaric's words were suddenly cut off by his mother. Hold on. The father and son turned their gazes to her. Maria shook her head and said, there is no need to assassinate him. But Mom, Alaric frowned at her words. Listen to me first. Maria gave him a look. Alaric took a deep breath and decided to hear her out. The first thing we need to do is go to Rivad and show this document to Baron Nathan. Once he learns the truth, we will have a justified reason to ask for compensation for the damages his son has caused, and Liam won't be able to reject if we demand for a trial by combat. Maria's words stunned both father and son. That's a sound plan, but what if Liam would deny the accusations and reject the trial? Alaric was fairly certain that Liam wouldn't admit his crimes that easily. He might do that, but Baron Nathan is not a foolish man. I know what kind of person he is. This document alone is enough to convict his son, so he would definitely agree to our demands. Maria replied, yes, you're right, but this could still damage the relationship between our households. Lucas scrunched his eyebrows. Maria nodded. That's true, but... She suddenly smiled and said, there is a way to strengthen our alliance even after this incident. Lucas and Alaric stared deeply at her. They mentioned that their daughter is interested in our son. Why don't we send them a marriage proposal? Of course, only on the premise that they agree to our demands. Maria snorted. Alaric stared at his mother in admiration. She had actually come up with that plan in just a short amount of time. All right. Let's do as you say, so what should we do first? Lucas was also impressed with her idea. Chapter 53, Words of Affirmation. But before that, what do you think about that girl? Maria stared at Alaric. Alaric thought about Hershey as he answered. She is a beautiful and talented young lady. If it's her, then I'm not against the proposal. That's good to hear. Maria was satisfied with his response. Now, here's what we need to do. Maria told them about her plan, from who they would bring to Rivad and to how they should act once they were there. She didn't miss any detail, even going as far as thinking of several countermeasures in case something fell through. That's the gist of it. Don't forget anything, since we still need to discuss this with the warriors. Speaking of which, she turned her gaze to Alaric and said with a smile, Sir Henry has successfully become an elite knight yesterday. You should go and look for him later. You were the first person he wanted to see when he made his breakthrough. Hearing this, Alaric was pleasantly surprised. He thought that the old knight would need a few months to advance, but it seemed like he had underestimated Henry. I will visit him after cleaning myself up. Alaric couldn't wait to visit the old man and congratulate him. Then you should go. I will discuss the details with your mother. Just listen carefully once we talk about this with the knights. Lucas dismissed him with a light smile. All right. Then I'll excuse myself first. Alaric stood up, bowed to them, and left the study. Look at him go. He looks even more excited now than when he became a knight. Maria chuckled while shaking her head. Just leave him be. Sir Henry is like a grandfather to him. It's only natural for Alaric to feel happy about his advancement. That's true. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Outside the study, Alaric saw Elena standing by the door with a bored look. Elena, why are you still here? You should have returned to your room. He was inside the study for over an hour, so she must be tired. It's okay, my lord. I want to wait for you. Elena fidgeted as she lowered her head. Seeing her little movements, Alaric furrowed his eyebrows and sighed. She is still affected by what happened in Ravad. Alaric didn't expose her and gently grabbed her hand. Next time, you need to tell me if you ever feel tired or if you are uncomfortable about something. The warmth of his hand was like a magical medicine that eased her nerves. Amen, she hummed in response. You should go and take a shower. We will visit Sir Henry later. The girl lifted her head and asked, why? Did something happen to Sir Henry? Yes, but it's a good thing. You will know later. The two parted ways. Alaric headed to his private bathroom, which was beside his bedroom, while Elena headed to the maidservant's public bathhouse. Inside the bathroom, Alaric removed the bandages and started cleaning his wounds. He then washed himself using the scented soap and dried his wet body with a clean cloth. Man, this thing really smells good. I should check on how the store is doing once I have some free time. Alaric stepped out of the bathroom and went to his room to change into a set of casual clothes. While he was combing his hair with his fingers in front of the mirror, he heard a series of knocks on the door. My lord, it's me. Elena's voice drifted into his ears. You may come in. Creak. Now dressed in a new maid uniform, Elena stepped inside his room. Alaric glanced at her through the mirror and noticed that her hair was still wet. Elena, your hair is still wet. Let me help you with that. He turned around, grabbed a cloth, and approached her. There's no need to trouble you, my lord. I can do it by myself. Elena grabbed the cloth from his hand, but she realized that she was unable to take it from him. It's all right, Elena. You always do it for me, so let me do the same for you. Alaric gently grabbed her hand and pulled her in front of the mirror. Elena felt shy, but she didn't reject him. This was Alaric's first time doing this for someone else, so he was a bit clumsy. Seeing his serious face through the mirror, Elena giggled. Alaric stopped what he was doing and looked at her. Did you just laugh? No, I didn't. Elena shook her head while holding back her laughter. Alaric smiled wryly. After patting her hair dry, he grabbed a comb and started combing her hair. Elena didn't say anything and just watched his face through the mirror. At this moment, Alaric's voice echoed in her ears. Elena, my parents want me to marry Hershey to solidify the alliance between both our households. Elena remained silent at his words. She already knew that this would happen after she saw Hershey. She was the most beautiful woman Elena had ever seen. She was also talented in painting and tea making, and she was also a smart woman. Elena felt that Hershey was a perfect match for her lord. That was her honest thought after meeting her. I agreed with their decision, Alaric added. Why are you telling me this? Elena asked. Alaric continued combing her hair as he replied, I just felt that I should inform you. Elena turned around and lifted her head to look at him. You don't need to feel guilty, my lord. I understand your difficulties, and I know that this is also for the best of the town. But please, don't forget me, my lord. I will always be here for you. Alaric grabbed her shoulders and embraced her tightly. I know, Elena. Thank you for always taking care of me. You will always have a special place in my heart. His words made her feel a mixture of emotions. After some time, Elena broke free from his embrace and smiled at him. We should get going, my lord. You're right, Alaric chuckled as he nodded his head. Chapter 54. observing the progress of the trainees. The two headed to Henry's house, which was located a few hundred meters away from the main mansion. But they didn't get far when they spotted the very person they were looking for walking towards them in his standard knight uniform. My lord, the old knight looked visibly excited upon seeing him, but when he saw Alaric's wounds, he frowned. What happened? He was resting in his house when they returned, so he didn't know what had happened. Alaric smiled and shook his head. It's a long story. I'll tell you the details later. He quickly changed the topic. Anyway, I heard that you've become an elite knight. Congratulations. The old knight smiled. It's only because I had the beast's soul crystal. If it weren't for that, it would have taken me years before I could achieve a breakthrough. Thanks to you, I saved plenty of time. I'm really grateful, my lord. Alaric chuckled. Like I said, you deserve that reward, Sir Henry. By the way, Elena also came here to congratulate you on your breakthrough. Alaric turned his head and winked at Elena. The girl was flustered, but she quickly stepped forward to congratulate the old knight. Congratulations on your advancement, Sir Henry. The old knight grinned. Thank you, Miss Elena. Oh, please, just call me by my name. Elena was overwhelmed by how the old knight was formally speaking to her. That won't do. You are a special person in this household, Miss Elena. Everyone knows that. The old knight chuckled. Elena blushed at his words. She understood what he was implying, and it made her embarrassed. We should talk somewhere more comfortable. Why don't we head to the training ground? There are plenty of seats there. I'm about to do my daily training anyway, Alaric suggested. Sounds good. I'm also on my way there to observe the training of the new recruits. Henry nodded. What about you, Elena? Will it be all right with you? Alaric glanced at her. Huh? Why, yes. I will follow you wherever you want to go, my lord. Elena didn't expect him to ask for her opinion, so she almost stuttered. In that case, let's go. I also want to check the progress of the new recruits. It's been a while since they started training. Some of them should be close to becoming a knight apprentice, Alaric said as he took the lead. The trio headed to the training ground under the curious gazes of the servants. When they arrived, they saw a group of young warriors dressed in their training clothes wielding their wooden weapons with synchronized movements. The person responsible for overseeing their training for the day was Rigger. He was quite strict, so the recruits were extra careful so as not to upset him. Rigger was the first to notice their presence. He immediately approached them and bowed. Greetings, my lord. He then cupped his fists at Henry. Sir Henry. The old knight returned his greeting by cupping his fists, while Alaric simply nodded his head. How are the recruits doing? Alaric asked while searching for Rasmus's figure among the trainees. They are doing pretty well for newbies. This batch is better than the last group. Two of them even showed exemplary results, Rigger announced proudly. As one of the trainers, he was pleased by their performance. Oh, Alaric's interest was piqued. He wondered if he was talking about the same people he was thinking. The old knight also showed interest in this matter, and even Elena was the same. Which of them are you talking about? Alaric asked while rubbing his chin. Rigger beamed as he replied, It's Rasmus and Renanti. Do you want me to call them? Renanti. I don't remember someone like that among the exceptional young knights in my past life. Please call them over. I'd like to closely observe their progress. Alaric nodded. All right. Rigger went back to the trainees and summoned the two he had mentioned. He then brought them to Alaric. My lord, it's them. This one is Rasmus, and this guy is Renanti. Rigger proudly introduced the top trainees. Alaric turned his gaze at the two. Rasmus looked completely different compared to when he first met him at the orphanage. He had grown some muscles, and he also looked a few centimeters taller. He had even trimmed his long hair, which made him look more like a warrior. On the other hand, Renanti was a complete stranger to Alaric. He looked a bit older than Rasmus and was probably 20 years old. He had long, wavy black hair and a pair of cold-looking onyx eyes. He was also quite tall at over 190 centimeters, and his physique was the most athletic among the recruits. Greetings, Lord Alaric. Rasmus and Renanti greeted him with a light bow. Alaric nodded to them and said, "You two showed the best results, so you must be properly rewarded. Give them more tonics to help them strengthen their bodies," he reminded Rigger. "I'll do as you, my lord." "What are you two standing there for? Go and thank Lord Alaric." Rigger glared at the two. Hearing this, they immediately thanked Alaric. "Thank you for the reward, my lord. Continue working hard, and you will receive more rewards." Alaric smiled and tapped their shoulder. "We will do our best, my lord." "All right, you should go back to your training." "Don't mind us." Alaric waved his hand and sent Rigger a knowing look. Rigger understood his intentions and left with Rasmus and Renanti. As they walked away, Rasmus turned his head and took another look at Alaric. It seems like Lord Alaric went through another battle again. "Just when can I go with him?" he whispered upon seeing the fresh wounds on Alaric's arms. Rigger snorted when he heard his remarks. "If you want to join Lord Alaric in battle, you better work harder. With your current strength and skill level, you will only be able to serve as an ordinary guard." Rasmus lowered his head and clenched his fists. "Just give me a little bit more time, my lord." Chapter 55, Josephus Silvasod. After Alaric's daily mission, a servant came to the training ground and informed him, as well as the knights, about when the meeting will be held. "A meeting? Ha! Is this about your recent visit to Ravad, my lord?" Henry curiously stared at Alaric. The latter still hadn't told him how he got his wounds. "Yes, pretty much." Alaric nodded with a serious look. "Then I should take my leave first. I can't go to the meeting hall covered in sweat." Henry chuckled while shaking his head. "All right. We'll see you later, Sir Henry." "See you later, my lord." The old man bowed to him and left. An hour later, Alaric headed to the meeting hall. He told Elena to get some rest so the girl wasn't with him this time. When he entered the spacious hall, he saw the knights and the elite knights of the household seated before a long table. Among them was his uncle, Charles Silvasod, who was leisurely chatting with a young warrior sitting on the chair to his left. As if sensing his arrival, Charles turned his head and waved at him enthusiastically. "Alaric, come here and sit beside your uncle. I'd like to introduce you to someone." Alaric was disgusted upon seeing him, but he maintained a cool appearance. He decided to play along with his uncle. "Yes, my lord." Alaric took a seat on the empty chair beside Charles. "Alaric, do you still remember him?" Charles pointed at the young warrior beside him. Alaric stared at the young warrior with a calm expression. "How could I forget the face of my cousin?" "Of course. We met a few times when we were young," Alaric responded to his uncle while nodding at the young warrior. This man was Charles's bastard son, Josephus Silvasod. He looked like he was in his late teens, but he was actually over 20 years old. He had a slender physique much like his father. However, unlike the men of House Silvasod who had striking gray hair, Josephus had blonde hair which he inherited from his mother. Charles grinned and whispered to his ears, "Thanks to the herbs I got from you, Josephus became a knight." Alaric was taken aback. "Congratulations, Josephus." Alaric had mixed feelings about this cousin of his. In his past life, Josephus had never become a knight. He had always been stuck as a knight apprentice, which made Charles very disappointed in him. Josephus worked even harder to meet his father's expectations, but his efforts weren't rewarded. He was still unable to advance, which left him depressed. When Charles took over the baron's position after Lucas's death, Josephus committed suicide, but the reason for his suicide was kept a secret. Josephus scratched his head in embarrassment. "Thank you, my lord. If it weren't for the dragon-tail fern, I wouldn't have enough mana to advance." Looking at his honest and shy face, Alaric was baffled. "Just why did you hang yourself, Josephus? Just what pushed you to end your own life?" This matter was one of the few things that remained unanswered even after Alaric's death. "I hope you're not like your father, my dear cousin." While he was deep in his thoughts, the door sprung open as Maria and Lucas stepped in. Everyone immediately stood up from their seats the moment they arrived. "Greetings, my lord." Greetings, my lady. Lucas scanned everyone's faces and saw Alaric sitting beside his uncle. He found it unusual since he felt that Alaric didn't like Charles. However, he didn't say anything and just calmly took his seat. Lucas cleared his throat and spoke. Everyone, I gathered you all here to inform you about what happened to the people we sent to Rivard. I guess some of you are already aware of what happened, but for the sake of those who don't know anything, I will say it once again. Everyone adjusted their posture as they listened closely. Lucas recounted what he had heard from Alaric and the rest of the warriors who were sent to Rivard. When the knights heard this, they were furious. How dare they attack the heir of House Silvasaud? They must be tired of living. Charles slapped his hand on the table. Seeing this, Alaric sneered inwardly. Pretentious bastard. Meanwhile, the other knights also expressed their anger. I can't believe that the second son of House Paxley would do something like this. We must make that bastard pay. The hall became noisy as everyone expressed their rage. Silence, Lucas's indifferent voice resonated in their ears, making everyone shut their mouths. I understand your anger and frustration. That's why we came up with a plan to make that bastard pay for what he did. After saying this, Lucas gave his wife a look. Maria knew that it was her turn to speak. This is what we have decided to do. Maria told them about her plan. It was more detailed than what they had discussed earlier. We need a show of force to pressure House Paxley, so we need to send some of our elite knights to Rivard. Are there any volunteers? Maria swept her gaze at the people inside the hall. I will go. The newly advanced elite knight, Henry, was the first to volunteer. He looked incredibly furious by the look on his face. Maria nodded at the old man to show her appreciation. I will go too. Charles smiled as he raised his arm. Alaric narrowed his eyes, wondering what his uncle was up to this time. Please sign me up, my lady. I was with Lord Alaric when the attack happened. I must see this to the end. Warwick raised his hand with a cold look. Thank you. Maria nodded to Warwick. Now I will announce who among the knights will join in the trip to Rivard. Alaric, Aldrin, Bernard, Chelmo, Rigger, Arthur, and Josephus. Including the 3 elite knights, the 7 of you will lead 30 of our warriors to Rivard. Do you have any questions? Chapter 56, Preparations Before Departure. What if someone will attack North Pine Town while most of our skilled warriors are away? Someone asked with a concerned look. That wouldn't be an issue. As long as there's no disaster-grade monster, nothing will happen to the town. Besides, I'm already thinking of hiring someone who can guarantee the safety of the town and the estate. Lucas spoke confidently. Everyone was curious to know who he was talking about, but it didn't seem like Lucas had the intention of telling them, so no one asked, Are there more questions? At this moment, Henry raised his hand and asked, My lord, who will represent us for the trial by combat? Hearing this, everyone perked their ears as they stared at Lucas. Who is the strongest knight in the household? Lucas muttered while smiling faintly at them. Everyone turned their gazes to Alaric. They had already accepted the fact that Alaric was stronger than them. Even in the surrounding cities, it would be difficult to find someone who could defeat him. It looks like we all have the same idea. Lucas chuckled. My lord, wouldn't it be dangerous for Lord Alaric? Unexpectedly, Charles expressed his worrying about the decision. He continued, I'm aware that he is powerful, but accidents happen in battle, especially in a trial by combat where everyone puts their life on the line. A few people nodded at his words, clearly in agreement with him. Alaric was the only heir of House Silvasaud. If something happened to him, there would be no one to succeed Lucas's position. Lucas didn't respond immediately. He looked at his son and asked his opinion. What do you think, Alaric? How confident are you? All eyes gathered on Alaric as soon as the Baron uttered those words. Sensing everyone's eyes on him, Alaric remained calm. If it was anyone else, they might not be able to bear the pressure of their expectations. However, this little bit of pressure was nothing to someone who had experienced a large-scale war. With an indifferent expression, Alaric responded, "As long as the enemy is not an elite knight, I can guarantee my victory. Everyone may rest assured, you just need to ensure that no one will interfere with the trial." The veteran warriors were amazed by his composure and unwavering courage. "Yes, my lord. We will do our best to ensure the fairness of the trial," the warriors replied in unison. Charles narrowed his eyes. Alaric was already gaining their support when he only recently became a knight, and this made him feel threatened. "I should dispose of him while it is still early." This thought crossed his mind. "Good. Now that we have decided on our representative for the trial, you guys should leave and make your preparations for tomorrow's trip." Lucas dismissed them. The next day, Alaric woke up early to do his daily routine. No one was in the training ground when he arrived, so the place was unusually quiet. Only the occasional chirping of the birds and the buzzing sounds of insects could be heard in the background. Without further ado, Alaric started doing his exercises. 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 pull-ups, 10 kilometers run. Soon, it was time for his sword exercises. 100 vertical slashes, 100 diagonal slashes, 100 horizontal slashes, 100 stabs. At the final stab, the cyan screen appeared in front of him. You received 10 battle points. You received 1 EXP. You received 1 stat point. Alaric Silvasud 90 XP, 371 500ths. Potential B. Traits: horseback riding C, swordsmanship SSS, close combat C, archery F, hunting E, tracking F, sixth sense F. Strength 100. Stamina 34 plus. Agility 43 plus. Vitality 27 plus. Endurance 42 plus. Mana 13 plus. Battle points to 560. Stat points 34. Requirements for next advancement: 500 EXP, 100 in all attributes, and 5,000 battle points. He now had 30 for stat points. He felt tempted to use them all, but he refrained from doing it. Just then, he suddenly heard a series of footsteps. Step, step, step. He closed the cyan screen and looked at the person who had arrived. My lord Rasmus didn't expect to see Alaric this early in the morning. From his sweaty face, he could tell that Alaric was probably training. "I heard that they would leave again today." He actually woke up early just to not skip his training. Lord Alaric is truly different from everyone else. No wonder his strength is already formidable at his age. Rasmus's eyes flashed with veneration. "Rasmus, what are you doing here so early in the morning?" Alaric was also surprised to see him. Rasmus laughed in embarrassment as he replied, "I came here to practice my swordsmanship." Alaric smiled at his words. "I see. Your commitment is commendable, but you shouldn't overdo your training. Enough rest is also necessary in building a strong body." "Thank you for your advice, my lord. I will keep it in mind." Rasmus lowered his head to express his gratitude. "Then, I won't disturb you. I'll take my leave first." Alaric tapped his shoulder, turned around, and walked away. Looking at his back, Rasmus shouted, "Be careful on your trip, my lord." Hearing this, Alaric waved his hand without looking back. A few hours later, the entourage for the trip assembled in front of the main mansion, bidding farewell to their families. Alaric was also there to say goodbye to his parents and Elena. Elena wanted to come with them, but Alaric didn't agree this time. Things could get dangerous, so it was better for Elena to remain at the estate. For this trip, Alaric decided to ride on a horse to make the journey faster. He was also appointed as the leader of the group, which everyone unanimously agreed. "Is everyone ready?" Alaric swept his gaze at the warriors, looking carefully at the equipment they were carrying. "Check the equipment and the supplies. Make sure that we have brought all the things we need," he reminded them with a stern gaze. "Yes, my lord." The warriors did as instructed and began to inspect everything. After ensuring that they hadn't forgotten anything, Alaric took one last look at the people they would leave behind and shouted, "Let's go!" Chapter 57. A shocking encounter. Because of the size of their entourage, the soldiers garrisoned at the borders of Vale stopped them for an inspection. Alaric didn't want to cause trouble, so he told his subordinates to go along with the inspection. Luckily for them, one of the inspectors happened to be Anthony, the current commander of Vale's armed forces. Lord Alaric, Anthony was surprised to see him. "How have you been, Sir Anthony?" Alaric cupped his fists while smiling lightly at him. Hiding his surprise, Anthony peered at the equipment strapped on their horses and replied, "I have been well, my lord. Thank you for asking." He then cleared his throat and asked with a serious tone, "Can you tell me where you are headed to, my lord?" "We are headed to Rivad. You don't need to be alarmed, Sir Anthony." Alaric chuckled when he saw how cautious they were, but he also understood their situation. Anthony felt relieved to hear those words, but he didn't relax his guard. "I see. Then we will escort you until we leave the borders of Vale. I hope you understand." Hearing this, the warriors behind Alaric furrowed their eyebrows, which made Anthony's subordinates unconsciously hold the handle of their weapons. Sensing the tense atmosphere, Alaric immediately raised his hand, signaling his people not to cause any trouble. Anthony also warned his men not to be impulsive. If a battle was to break out, none of them would survive. He was sure of it. "All right, but please don't ask us any questions on the way." Alaric didn't reject his request. He was aware that Anthony was only doing this to keep an eye on them. Anthony nodded. "You can rest assured, my lord. I will make sure that my men won't speak a word about this. Then we will be in your care." Alaric smiled lightly. Anthony couldn't believe that he was actually intimidated by a knight who was a few decades younger than him. Although Alaric defeated him before, it was only an unofficial match where using mana wasn't allowed. He was confident that he could win against Alaric if they were to use mana. At least that was what he believed. Under the watchful eyes of Vale's garrison guards, Alaric's group traveled along the snow-covered road leading to Rivad. No one spoke along the way, making the atmosphere quite nerve-wracking. When Alaric's group was about to leave Vale's borders, Anthony raised his hand and signaled his men to stop following them. He then bowed to Alaric and said, "Thank you for your cooperation, my lord. Please forgive me if this may have offended you." Hearing this, Alaric waved his hand nonchalantly. "Till we meet again, Sir Anthony." Anthony watched as they disappeared into the distance. "It looks like something big is going to happen in Rivad. Sir, should we report this to the officials?" one of his subordinates asked. Anthony shook his head. "There's no need. Interfering with House Silver Swords matters won't do us any good. Let's just keep this under wraps. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." Later that afternoon, the snow is getting thicker. The horses might get sick if we continue. Alaric noticed that the horses had slowed down because of the thick pile of snow that filled the road. "Let's take a short break here." He commanded the group to stop. "Build a big fire that is enough to warm our bodies and our horses," he instructed. Everyone jumped down from their horses and divided themselves into small groups to efficiently do more tasks. One group volunteered to gather firewood, another one volunteered to scout the location, etc. No one remained idle, including Alaric. He joined the group that was responsible for gathering firewood. "It's so cold out here." He thought about the vagrants who had to live on the outskirts of Vale. There were people who refused to live in the city and chose to live in the secluded parts of the forest outside of Vale. Most of them couldn't afford the living expenses in the city, so they could only build their homes outside its influence. Many of them will die from the cold. Alaric sighed while thinking about those people. It took him more than 10 minutes to gather some usable firewood. Most had already been covered in snow and were too wet to be used. Alaric returned to the campsite to deliver the firewood he had gathered. However, just as he was about to turn around, he sensed a slight fluctuation of mana in a certain direction. Did I sense it wrong? He narrowed his eyes as he peered into the depths of the forest, but the heavy snowfall obscured his vision. Should I take a look? Driven by his curiosity, Alaric put down the firewood he had gathered and followed the direction where he last sensed the weird fluctuations of mana. He remained cautious as he headed deeper into the forest. His hand was resting on the hilt of his sword. If he sensed a sign of danger, he was prepared to draw his sword. In the next moment, he saw something moving underneath the snow. Is it an animal? Alaric cautiously approached, but upon getting closer, he discovered that the thing buried in the snow wasn't an animal. An elf. His eyes froze in shock. Alaric's first thought was to leave immediately, but a weak voice drifted into his ears. Help me. The voice was barely audible, but it was definitely the elf who had spoken. Alaric hesitated for a moment. Damn it! He carefully walked towards the elf, eyeing the surroundings for any potential traps. After making sure that there were no hidden traps, he immediately got down and dug the elf who was buried in the snow. As soon as he dug out the elf, Alaric was momentarily stunned. How beautiful! It was a face that surpassed the realms of humanity, one with an ethereal beauty that almost seemed like she was a goddess who had gone down to the mortal world. She's injured. Alaric noticed a patch of red on her abdomen. Chapter 58, Soul Mark. In her present state, she won't survive the cold. I should help her bandage her wounds first. Alaric lifted the elf and carried her inside a hollow tree to keep her warm. After placing her down, he took off his fur coat and draped it over her body for additional warmth. At this moment, he saw her long eyelashes fluttering, revealing a pair of cyan-colored eyes. Ah! Even the groaning sound she made was very enchanting. After making sense of her surroundings, she realized that there was an unfamiliar human in front of her. Her eyes widened in fear. She wanted to stand up and push him away, but she lost all strength as the pain in her abdomen finally registered. Hiss! She hissed in pain while keeping a cautious eye on the human. Seeing her like this, Alaric smiled bitterly in his heart. Don't worry, I won't hurt you. I just happened to discover you when I sensed an abnormal fluctuation of mana, he explained himself. The elf didn't believe his words. How can I trust the words of a human? Alaric sighed, feeling slightly annoyed by her prejudice. Still, he tried to reason with her in a calm voice. Look here, Miss Elf, you were the one who asked for help, so I kindly offered my hand. If I had bad intentions, I would have done it from the start. The elf's expression relaxed a bit upon hearing his words. Wait here for me. I'll go and get something to bandage your wounds. In the meantime, apply pressure on your wound. I'll be back soon. Alaric didn't wait for her to respond and stepped out of the hollow tree before rushing back to the camp. The elf sat there in silence. Can I really trust him? She didn't want to place her trust in a stranger, especially a human. However, given her condition, she had no choice but to believe in him. It's so cold. She lowered her head and pressed her abdomen. Meanwhile, Alaric hurried into the camp with the firewood he had gathered earlier. My lord, Aldrin was surprised to see him running in a hurry. I have no time to explain. Go and get me some bandages and medicine for stab wounds, Alaric instructed with a serious look. Aldrin was curious, but he didn't dare ask when he saw his stern gaze. Yes, my lord. While he was looking for the first aid kit, Alaric went to deliver the firewood he had gathered and asked the warriors to quickly make a fire. A moment later, Aldrin came running towards him with a leather sack in his hand. My lord, I have gathered what you requested. Good. Stay here and don't mention this to anyone, Alaric warned him before leaving in haste. Aldrin stared at his figure, wondering what had happened. What's going on? He muttered. By the time Alaric returned to the hollow tree, he found out that the elf had already lost consciousness. He quickly got down to check her pulse. When he sensed the faint beating of her heart, he heaved a sigh of relief. He then laid her down and rolled her shirt up to give him a clearer view of her wound. It's not too deep, but she lost too much blood and the cold weather is also making her condition worse. Alaric opened the leather sack and took out a handful of medicine paste. He then smeared it on her wound. This medicine paste was made from the same herb he used to stop Rigger's bleeding back in the cave at the Red Toad Gorge. He then wrapped her abdomen with bandages. After taking care of her fatal wound, he inspected her body to see if there were more wounds he hadn't seen earlier. There are some minor cuts, but they aren't fatal. Alaric smeared a small amount of the medicine paste on her cuts. That should do it. Now, what should I do with this elf? Leaving her here wasn't an option since her body was still weak after losing a lot of blood, but taking her back to the camp was also troublesome. I'm sure the warriors won't ask questions, but that bastard of an uncle would definitely be interested in this elf. Elves were beautiful creatures with innate abilities to control mana. Unlike humans who struggled to interact with mana, elves were born with the gift that allowed them to command mana at will. There was also a higher number of beast soul warriors among them. Thinking about this, Alaric rolled up her sleeve, which revealed a black ring-like mark on her wrist. As expected, she has a soul mark. This was a sign that this elf was a beast soul warrior. People born with soul marks were capable of extracting the abilities of monsters by absorbing their beast soul crystals. Her soul mark is still inactive, Alaric thought while inspecting her soul mark closely. It had no pattern, which means she was yet to absorb a beast soul crystal. I didn't expect that the first beast soul warrior that I would encounter is actually an elf. Alaric chuckled while shaking his head. Suddenly, he noticed that the elf was shivering from the cold, which made his eyes sink. There's no choice. I need to bring her to the camp and keep her close to the fire. Alaric grabbed a handful of dirt and smeared it all over her face to hide her beauty. He also wrapped her head with a cloth to hide her distinctive long ears and snow-white hair. After making sure that everything that shouldn't be seen was properly covered, he lifted the elf and carried her back to the camp. How should I explain this to them without making them suspicious? When he arrived at the camp, everyone curiously stared at the person he was carrying. "My lord, who is that person?" Henry approached with furrowed eyebrows. He could sense the mana in this person's body. Alaric kept his cool and responded with a calm voice. "She is a vagrant I found. She was dying from the cold, so I brought her here to give her a chance to live." Chapter 59. Ivana. A vagrant, huh? Charles raised his eyebrows as he stared at the figure who was almost covered from head to foot. Only her eyes and a small portion of her face were visible. I can sense mana from that woman's body. Is he hiding something? Charles's lips curved upwards as he stood up. He then approached Alaric and reminded him with a stern gaze. "My nephew, you should prioritize our task. Bringing that woman would only delay us. Besides, we don't know what kind of person she is. What if she is a thief or a criminal?" His voice wasn't loud, but it was clear enough for everyone to hear. Alaric glanced indifferently at him and responded, "I understand your concern, Uncle. I will take full responsibility for her actions and I will make sure that our trip won't be delayed." "You can rest assured." Charles stared deeply at him and shrugged his shoulders. "All right. I won't say anything more. Just keep an eye on her." Alaric nodded without saying anything. Seeing that he had no intention to chat, Charles awkwardly tapped Alaric's shoulder and went to a spot closer to the bonfire. "There is definitely something about that woman. I don't think my dear nephew would take in some random stranger. But what is special about her?" Charles thoughtfully watched as Alaric brought the woman closer to the bonfire. Unlike Charles, the warriors and the knights showed no interest in the vagrant woman. They were common outside of Vale, and some would even find their way to North Pine Town. After casting curious glances at her, they quickly lost interest. They trusted Alaric's decision, so no one questioned him or expressed any disagreement. After laying her down near the fire, Alaric beckoned to his cousin, Josephus. Josephus was a bit surprised by his sudden call, but he immediately came to his side and asked, "What can I do for you, my lord?" "Form a small team to hunt a big game. Make sure that it's big enough for everyone," Alaric instructed. Hearing this, Josephus nodded his head. "Yes, my lord." "You may leave." Josephus turned around and left. Although it was just a minor hunting task, he was happy that he finally had something to do. While his cousin was hunting their next meal, Alaric busied himself with making a nutritious medicinal extract for the wounded elf. He learned the concoction method from his superior, who was a transcendent knight. When he recalled the grumpy old man, his lips curved upwards. "I wonder what you are doing right now, Marquis Tyrone Galcitar." Just like Lucas, Tyrone was also an expert in the Estanian dragon leaderboard. Despite his advanced age, no warrior dared to underestimate him. At this moment, the injured elf opened her heavy eyelids and found herself in an unfamiliar environment surrounded by humans. More humans! Her eyes dilated as she felt a surge of anxiety. "Just stay down and relax. I didn't tell anyone about your identity, so you will be safe for the time being." A familiar voice drifted into her ears. "It's him." She turned with difficulty, and it was then that she found out that her head was wrapped in a cloth. Furthermore, she also felt a weird sensation on her face, as if something was smeared on it. Looking at her uncomfortable expression, Alaric muttered, "Just bear with it. I need to hide your features, so I covered your face in mud and wrap your head with a cloth. Don't move around too much if you don't want your ears to be exposed." The elf didn't say anything and just lightly nodded her head. "Those people are my subordinates, but not all of them are loyal to me, so you need to be careful not to expose your identity," Alaric reminded in a stern voice. "Thank you." A weak voice came out of her mouth. Alaric nodded and moved closer to her. In his hand was a bowl filled with the medicinal extract he had concocted earlier. "You need to drink this. It can help you increase your vitality." The elf glanced suspiciously at the foul-smelling liquid inside the bowl. "This is medicine. It's not poison, right?" Alaric saw through the disgust in her eyes. That was the same expression he showed when he first tasted this medicinal extract. "If you want to recover quickly, then you better drink this. Now open your mouth and don't make this difficult for me." Alaric grabbed a wooden spoon and dipped it into the medicinal liquid. After taking a spoonful of the liquid, he brought it to her lips. The revolting smell made her flinch, but under Alaric's cold, watchful eyes, she could only reluctantly open her mouth. Gulp! She held her breath as she swallowed down the so-called medicine. It was bitter and even a bit spicy, a taste that almost made her throw up. Alaric helped her sit up to make her more comfortable. "You need to drink all of this. Don't even think of spitting a single drop." "Amen," she hummed in response. A moment later, Josephus's small hunting group finally returned with a huge wild boar. "Good job," Alaric praised him, making the latter smile in embarrassment. Alaric then asked someone to make a soup using the wild boar's meat. Surprisingly, Arthur volunteered for the task, but it was a tough job for one man, so Alaric asked for 2 more volunteers to help him in skinning the boar. The skinning and the cooking process took more than a few hours, but everyone patiently waited. Who wouldn't want a hot soup in this kind of freezing weather? Soon, the hot boar meat soup was finally served. "Hey, this is your share. Eat it while it's still hot." Alaric handed a bowl of the boar meat soup to the elf. The elf took the bowl and muttered, "It's Ivana, not hey." "HM? What did you say?" Alaric glanced at her in surprise, pretending like he didn't hear her. The elf ignored him and blew air into the soup to make it less hot. Alaric chuckled and watched her quietly. "Ivana, that's not a bad name." Chapter 60, delayed because of the snowstorm. "My name is Alaric, but you should follow how everyone addresses me so that you won't attract their attention," Alaric muttered while looking at the elf. "I also told them that you are a vagrant, so we'll keep it that way while you're with us," he added. "I understand." Ivana nodded indifferently. Although she looked dirty right now, she couldn't hide the grace in her every move, as if it was a habit that she had practiced for many years. "Did you get those wounds from a human?" Alaric probed. The elf's shoulder trembled upon hearing his words. Seeing her like that, Alaric sighed. "You don't have to answer it. For a young elf like her, it must have been a terrible experience that left her traumatized. I shouldn't have asked her. We will be leaving soon. Why don't you stay with the group while you are still recovering?" Once we complete our task in Ravad, I will send you back to your home, Alaric suggested. This was the best he could do for her. Ivana didn't respond and just quietly ate the boar meat soup. Alaric waited for a while, but when he realized that she had no intention of speaking, he took a deep breath and let out a sigh while shaking his head. He then stood up and announced to the group, "We will depart at once after everyone is done eating their meal." "Yes, my lord," the warriors responded in unison. The snowstorm was getting worse, and they might be stranded if they don't leave soon. The horses had rested enough, and everyone had already filled their bellies with the hot boar soup. It was time to resume the journey. They didn't bother to clean up the mess. Everything would be buried in snow in a few hours. Prepared to depart, Alaric shouted to the group. The warriors immediately packed their stuff and hopped on their horses. While they were preparing to leave, Alaric walked towards the elf and squatted in front of her. "We're leaving now." Hearing this, Ivana nervously raised her head. Please take me with you," she muttered in a quivering voice. "We don't have a carriage, so it would be a bumpy trip. Are you sure?" Alaric found her pitiful, so he was willing to help her. Riding on a horse would open her wounds, which might worsen her injuries. Ivana nodded. "You're the only human I can trust." It hadn't been long since they met, but she felt like she could place her trust in him. He was her last hope to return to her family. "All right, let's go." Alaric stood up and reached out his hand. Looking at his face, Ivana prayed in her heart, "Please, I hope I'm making the right choice by following this human." Ivana grabbed his hand and allowed him to lift her. When the warriors saw that Alaric was planning to take the vagrant along, nobody said anything. They believed that he only pitied the poor woman. However, one person had a different opinion regarding this vagrant woman. It was Charles. Is he really planning to bring that woman with us? He felt that it was suspicious that his nephew was willing to go so far for someone he had only met a few hours ago. Although he was curious, he didn't reveal his thoughts. "This is making me strangely excited." Charles pulled his eyes away from them and grinned. The group continued their journey amid the heavy snow. The road was becoming more difficult to navigate because of the thick fog. If it weren't for Henry, they might have been lost in the fog. At this moment, Henry urged his horse to move closer to Alaric. "At this rate, we might not make it to Ravad tomorrow, my lord. The sky is also getting darker, so I think we should find a place to set up camp," the old man suggested while looking at the darkening sky. Alaric agreed with the old man, so he immediately instructed the group to find a place to set up camp. An hour later, someone found a narrow cave and reported it to Alaric. In a place where everything was covered in snow, a cave was a good option to build their camp. "That's where I found the cave, my lord," the warrior pointed in a certain direction where a hill stood. Alaric followed his gaze and saw a cave underneath the hill. It wasn't big, but it was more than enough to fit everyone in the group. "Sir Aldrin, Sir Chelmo," he called out. The two knights whose names were mentioned immediately came to his side. "My lord, what can we do for you?" Alaric glanced at them and instructed, "You two, form a small team with 5 members each and check the surroundings. Report to me if you find anything unusual." Hearing this, the two knights acknowledged his command with a nod. "Yes, my lord." "You may go." Alaric waved his hand. The two knights quickly left to gather their members. After they left, Alaric beckoned to Arthur and said, "Sir Arthur, please go and check what is inside the cave." Arthur saluted. "I obey." He then squeezed his legs and commanded his horse to move. While waiting for Arthur to return, Alaric turned his head. "Ivana, are you all right?" Hugging him from behind was the elf, who was fully covered by the fur coat. "I'm fine." He could hear her labored breathing. "Just hold on for a while." Alaric could only pray that she won't collapse. MN. Alaric took out a rope and tied her to his body to make sure that she wouldn't fall from the horse. Ivana understood this, so she didn't voice any protest. But the feeling of having their bodies so close to each other made her feel embarrassed. She had never been this close to someone of the opposite gender. Alaric was unaware of her thoughts. His focus was entirely on the surroundings.